that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to The Final Frontier. Today I have for you Star Trek Rise of the Federation 3 by Christopher L. Bennett. Uncertain Logic. Non-spoiler wise, I really don't have too much to say. We are continuing off, of course, the previous story, so in the heaviest part of the background, we still have the Orient Syndicate and other crime factions trying to derail the Federation, to stop it from being a thing. But as time goes on, it seems more and more unlikely, but they're still working at that. But that's very much a part of the background. We also have a deeper exploration of the where. If you don't remember what the where is, because if you remember my last video, I thought we were going to be dealing with the Borg again, but we're not. What we're dealing with is the where again. Now, one of the episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, we had this mysterious space station that would take people and use them, and there's seemingly no explanation as to what it is. It was a one-off episode. It was done. It was a mystery. We never got any resolution to it. We left it. Bye-bye. So here we are getting more involved with that plot thread. And we also have the Krishana on Vulcan seemingly being stolen and replaced with a duplicate. However, being as a high security place that it is, many of the Vulcans don't believe that it was stolen. In fact, that people just didn't look at it closely enough, and so therefore feel that it was perhaps a forgery, that it was never real in the first place. Of course, we know it was objectively an actual thing because we watched the episodes of Enterprise where Archer met, what's his name? The big Vulcan that they all worship. Or not worship, but, you know, they follow his teachings. But the big thing of this book is if it is a forgery, then the entire course correction that they've been on since Enterprise has been a lie. So it causes a whole political upheaval. But that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. And again, it continues to be solid. I don't have anything particular to say about it in terms of... It's not the greatest thing I've ever read, but it is really interesting, the things that they do. And I'm a child. But there's a lot of good stuff in there, and there's some surprisingly really well written speeches from certain characters in this story as well. So, overall, do I recommend it? I mean, listen, it has been over 20 years now, or about, since Enterprise came out. Now, I know in recent years we've gotten Picard, but the thing about Picard, right, is that the Next Generation is super famous. Like, people to this day talk about the Next Generation. We have memes on Discord and other social media sites of Picard doing things. Like, that has stood the test of time, so we still get stories said after about it, right, because people care about it. Now, of course, I love Enterprise. But we've gotten no additional stories on TV or movie-wise from this crew. This is also an earlier era of Star Trek where it is a bit harder to do stories the further in time you do it. I mean, you could probably come up with some one-off story that could be done in an episode, but is somebody going to really spend that money on that just for one reunion episode or movie for the Enterprise crew? Because what would you even do in this time period? I highly doubt we will ever see, unless it's some sort of animated thing, a Enterprise reunion, as much as I would love to see it, like what they did with Picard Season 3. it's not going to happen. I'll eat my words one day if they do, but out of all the things they could do, I highly doubt it will be that one. So if you want a particular continuation, if you wanted a season 5 and 6 of Enterprise, your best bet is these novels. So if that is of interest to you, and you want characters that are written and feel genuinely like themselves like they do in the show, of course with some changes like Trip being a part of Section 31, then these are the books to do it. So yes, I do recommend it. I'm going to get into some minor spoilers here. If you don't want that, now's the time to go. These people that are in a system that has a wear facility, they're like, what if we just, put inmates in there? And they're like, well, what about when we run out of inmates? Okay, well, we have overpopulation, right? We'll put some poor people in there. Like, homeless people. And it was just kind of scary to me how callous that conversation was. Hoshi, unfortunately, whether it be the show or the novels, there's like one novel where she really gets to shine, which I didn't review. But most of the time, Hoshi just has nothing to do. I'm gonna be frank. Hoshi's the most wasted character in both the TV show and the books ever. If there was one thing I was looking forward to the books doing, it was giving an improvement to Hoshi, which they don't really do. They give a little bit to Travis even, but nothing really for Hoshi. However, it is interesting because if you think about the timeline of this, it's been 14 years since the Enterprise show ended in this book. And Hoshi's been in service for 14 years. Or it's been 14 years since she joined the Enterprise. But, she's getting close to 40. And she's never had kids or family or gotten married. And while that stuff didn't matter to her when she was younger, it's starting to matter to her now. The fact that she's still single. Another thing that was interesting between two characters was this conversation of sex. And it being an act of giving, of sharing. Not control and taking. Which, has some deeper stuff you could discuss there. Just off of the implication of that sentence. But it was a very Star Trek sort of discussion. I guess, if that makes sense. We get some interesting pairings as well. We get Phlox, as always, in this story. But as well, we get Tobin Dax. As well as Oisha. I don't know if you said his name properly. But this is a Cardassian poet who has been exiled from Cardassia. Which, of course, as a fan of Deep Space Nine, is really cool. It also helps that he's written extremely well. Velas, who was in the Romulan 2-book arc as well as the actual TV show itself, he threatens a harsh mind meld onto Paul and Archer so that they're forced to believe that they actually did fabricate the Kashara. Because they're basically the whole thing with Velas is we have the initial plan that happened in the show where the Romulans working with some of the Vulcans to try to turn Vulcan into more of a Romulan sort of place. Of course, that plan didn't fall through as they worked in the shadows. So then we got the Romulan War arc in the books. And Velas was with them because, as we learn, his parents were both Romulan spies that were put on Vulcan. But for all intents and purposes, he was raised Vulcan. So he's like, oh, I'll go back to my true family. So it goes to help them in the war. But the truth is that they don't really see him as a true Romulan. So they betray him as well. So now he's back here, where he still thinks of the ideals of the Romulans as better. But he doesn't trust the Romulans. So now he just wants to make the Vulcans be Romulans, basically, by changing how they act. But the first way to do that is to put into question the Kashana and how truthworthy that was. So Oisha, or however you say his name, the Cardassian poet, gives this wonderful speech to the Vulcans as he discusses, the military state of Cardassia, as we'll learn much more about in Deep Space Nine and some supplementary material. And now because of that, he tried to raise his daughter and his family to the best of his ability. But his daughter was so mired to the state that she betrayed her own mother, got her mother executed, and almost got her father in prison. But instead her father got sentenced to exile. And so he wanders other places, traveling other places, because he can never return home, because he's not proud of what his place, his home has become, nor is he proud of the offspring that he has sired. So it is interesting to see a Cardassian this early on in the timeline, but also just a wonderfully written little section where he had his whole speech. Gamora, I have never talked about that much. It's just a crew member on the ship, but he's been having, fairly decent chemistry, nothing that I consider phenomenal, with Hoshi, and he kind of gets injured, but he still asks Hoshi if she would marry him, which, of course, she says yes. Archer's promoted to Starfleet Chief of Staff, so basically Admiral Force position now, as long as having this also wonderful speech that was written, which I'm not getting too much into the speech, I guess, but it felt very Star Trek, and it was very well written, and just really shows the growth that Archer has had over the course of these books alone, in terms of going from an explorer to kind of a soldier to kind of the backbone of Starfleet, and not only Starfleet, but the Federation. I mean, it seems like an exaggeration, but it's really not, that without Archer, you don't have the Federation. And Archer realizing that, as much as he doesn't like it, he's quite good at politics. So, I also didn't talk too much about these two characters named Troma and Sconn, because they're really ultimately irrelevant. The main important thing that they do in this book is, by the very end, Troma is pregnant. And at the end of the book, she gives birth to a beautiful Vulcan baby. Who is that Vulcan, you ask? Sarek, Spock's father. So here's some connections to TOS as well, making it all feel whole and congruent. But that's pretty much it for Uncertain Logic. Up next, we have Rise of the Federation 4, Live by the Code. So, until next time, guys, let's engage. I probably should start with that. Explore new books and new civilizations, new authors, and head to the final frontier of the Star Trek Litverse. Until then, I guess.